In the first half of 2017, I flew into Melbourne and picked up a hire car from the airport. When I was signing the paperwork, I was showing my ID to prove how I was, and I said to the car hire person, "If you can't trust a pastor in a church, who can you trust?" I was not met with a favourable reply. In my naivety, the response surprised me. According to Ipsos, the most trusted people in Australia are doctors, closely followed by teachers and scientists, each scoring above 50% in the scale. At a global level, this trust factor translates across 32 different countries that were surveyed. The least trusted professions were cabinet officials, government ministers, advertising executives, and social media influencers, who were all tied with politicians in general. So social media influencers and politicians scored 15%. Bring on the Australian federal election. The average person was rated by their peers as moderately trustworthy at 38%. So how might others rate you? How would you rate me? And does being trustworthy really matter? Let me pray. Jesus, as we take some time to delve into your word once again, as we delve into your teaching, would you remind us afresh of the truths that you want us to grab hold of, to live out, to live by. Use this time for your glory. Amen. Now, once again, we're going to open it up today, where we will open it up to hear your thoughts and on the topic of promises and being people of our word. And so we're actually going to do it twice. We're going to do it once partway or in a few minutes' time, and then once again later on in the message. So you need to actually stay awake for the whole message this time, not just the start of it, okay? Okay, so one of the biggest challenges for people elected to public office, from local council to state government and federal government, is that they will often say what they think people want to hear in order to get elected. Here's a clip from X, formerly Twitter. But we are discovering in Victoria, it is easy to make promises when you are not around to deliver on them. But let's be careful about pointing the finger. In a study by the Governance Institute of Australia, when faced with an ethical dilemma, it is interesting to see how unethical people think in certain scenarios and what they think, oh, well, that's really unethical compared to others. Chucking a sickie, taking a sick day when you're not actually sick, was seen as minus 30, somewhat unethical. A win at all costs approach to sport, minus 41. Keeping a parcel that was wrongly delivered to you, minus 59. It was considered on the verge of being very unethical. So for us, there can be a sliding scale around ethical behaviour. And so today we've got Janet, who's got the microphone, and for the Zoomies, if you want to pop up your hand at any stage, if you want to contribute to the conversation, and Emma will unmute you at home so you can join us as well. So earlier on in the service, we asked the question, who do you trust? And before we were to explore that a little more, what makes people trustworthy? Or similarly, what makes a person ethical? How would you define or describe a trustworthy or ethical person? Love to hear your thoughts on that. So what are the qualities, what are the elements that go into someone being a trustworthy or an ethical person? Just pop up your hand and Janet will race around with a microphone, or for those at home, pop up your hand and we'll unmute you as well. But when you think about who do you trust, what goes into being or defines a trustworthy or an ethical person? Because if we get the definitions kind of bolted down a little bit, that can be helpful. So, think about a trustworthy or an ethical person. How would you describe what it means to be trustworthy or ethical? So we've got Lorraine. Thanks, Lorraine. Good to have you back.
There's a number of people in this room I would trust, and I trust you too, David.
Okay, so that's who you would trust, but what makes them trustworthy? So we'll go back to Lorraine, so we'll give her a right of reply. So what makes a person trustworthy?
Your actions.
Your actions, okay. So your actions prove that you're trustworthy, so following through with that. So Stephen, at the sound desk.
Showing integrity.
Showing integrity. So what does that look like? When you think about what it means to show integrity, what does it look like to actually demonstrate that?
Being constant. Being constant.
Being constant, so that consistency. Yep, okay, great. Other thoughts? So we've got Sam up the back.
Doing what you say you will.
Okay, so you say you're going to do something, and so it's that follow through. It's doing what you say you're going to do. What about for people at home? Feel free to pop up your hand as well if you've got any thoughts on that. We've got Colleen down the front.
Thank you. Knowing that you'll get the truth from them.
Knowing that you'll get the truth from them. Okay. So So we'll come back to that one, Colleen.
Being helpful.
Being helpful. Okay. So someone that actually takes time to actually help and support you. Yep. All right. No, that's just the mic going a bit loud. All right. So we'll go back to Colleen's statement about, what was it again? You get the truth from them. Okay. So is it okay to lie? No. Is that a resounding no? Well, what about a white lie? Does my bottom look big? No. Does this jumper look good on me, or something like that? Or what do you think of my hair? And you don't really like it. Is it okay to tell a white lie? No. Maybe. Don't comment. Okay. All right. So we've got Paul at home, so we might just unmute Paul. Go for it, Paul.
Yeah, white lies is when you are complimentary. I mean, when you try to compliment a person, praising him on how he looks and how he speaks and all that. And actually, white lies is being truthful also to friends. That's my opinion.
Right, okay. So it's that challenge and that relationship or that context around friendship as well. Yep. So we'll just keep the slide on the screen, Stephen. So as far as that PowerPoint slide, so we'll put that on the screen. Yep. So white lies, what do other people think? Oh, Colleen?
You've got to be on the lookout for something good to say about your hair.
Okay.
And not comment on the part that you don't like unless you've got a very close relationship with the person, because you don't want to hurt them.
Yep. Okay, so you take into mind, so we've got Forrest up the back as well, Janet,
Okay.
So sorry, your job's not over yet. So we've got a situation where you don't want to hurt people's feelings, so if you can grab hold of something that might be positive about it, then focus on that rather than the things that you don't like. Yep, so for Forrest?
For me, you can lie a little, you can lie a lot.
Yep.
So I'd rather be graceful and tell the truth.
Yep.
Even though it might not be the norm,
Yep.
a good thing, whatever, people might perceive it. But yeah, in a little, then you can do a lot, then I don't trust.
Yeah.
You've lost me.
Yep,
Yeah.
and so as soon as someone steps into that field of telling a white lie, then you have concerns about the whole trust of them completely, even if they lie a little bit. Yep, so Matt?
So I'm going to play devil's advocate.
Yep.
And say, I don't believe that the truth is always beneficial.
Yep.
I'm not saying... I'm trying to say this without... I'm not saying lying is good and lying is definitely bad. But when it comes to maybe how you approach someone, you don't necessarily need to be completely truthful.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of a situation how I can... I'll come back.
Well, we might have a chance to come back. Yep. Okay. And so for Matt, it's that whole thing of, okay, well, the truth can be quite hurtful. And so how do we respond? Do we just not respond? Or do we package it in a certain way? And so one of the challenges is that we can lie by omission. We can lead someone to believe something to be a particular way by not saying what is actually true. And part of the challenge is that I've seen this in hospital wards, where I've visited someone and, you know, or you see it on TV where the claim is, oh, you're going to be okay. And they're not going to be okay. They're going to die. But to protect them, we say, oh, no, you're going to be okay. And you think, okay, is it okay to lie in that situation? Or is that just a white lie? And how do we go in those sorts of circumstances? Well, today we're going to go on to the next tract of Jesus' Greatest Hits, Volume 1, A Beginner's Guide to Countercultural Living. And I invite you to turn to Matthew 5:33 if you've got your Bible with you. And towards the end, I'm going to invite some more feedback as we wrap up our time together. Jesus is speaking to his first followers, and the crowd is listening in. And they're becoming increasingly uncomfortable, not because of where they're sitting, but because of the words being spoken. They're becoming increasingly uncomfortable as Jesus unpacks his kingdom of heaven ethics and how he wants his followers to live these out in the realm of earth. And it's as if each one of these kingdom of heaven ethics, as it kind of gets popped out by Jesus, it lands closer and closer and closer to home. Don't murder. Well, most would have said, oh, I've never done that. But what about hate? Don't commit adultery. Well, I haven't done that. But what about lust? Don't get a divorce. But what about living in a faithful relationship with your partner, true to your marriage vows? Oh, and speaking of vows, Matthew 5:33. You have heard that our ancestors were told, you must not break your vows. You must carry out the vows that you made to the Lord. And I can imagine those hearing Jesus, starting to get wise on the pattern that Jesus is employing here. And they want to nod in agreement, but they're feeling really nervous about what might come next. You see, the Torah, the first 5 books of the Old Testament, it clearly speaks about the importance of vows and oaths and keeping true to what you say. In Leviticus 19:12, it says, do not bring shame on the name of your God by using it to swear falsely. Numbers 32. A man who makes a vow to the Lord must never break. He must do exactly what he said he would do. In Numbers 31-16, which I threatened Leah to have to read earlier, goes on to say about the vows of a woman and when they are binding. Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 21. When you make a vow to the Lord your God, be prompt in filling it whatever you have promised him. Promptly fulfill all your vows, or you will be guilty of sin. And then Leah read earlier from Ecclesiastes 5:4-7, which echoes the importance of being true to your word, to follow through with what you have promised to God. And it finishes up with a statement that talk is cheap. So Jesus' advice would have, people would have agreed with it. So then Jesus goes on to say, But I say, do not make any vows. Well, talk about a disrupted society. Don't make any vows. How on earth can you do business, reach agreements, and hold others to those agreements if you don't make any vows? Now, in Jesus' day, it was one thing to make a promise to God, even to make a promise before God. For God as my witness, I will. And people would try and create some wiggle room. The Mishnah, in a section called the Shirvut, that deals specifically with vows and oaths. In Jesus' mind, these are interchangeable and all-encompassing. Vows, oath, same thing. In the Shirvut, it says, if one administered the oath to the witness in the name of heaven and in the name of earth, these witnesses are exempt from liability from taking false oath or testimony, as that is not an oath in the name of God. So the Mishnah has these clauses, these aspects of fine print that you can claim by heaven, you can claim by earth, but you don't have to abide, you don't have to live it out, you don't have to do it, you don't have to abide by it. While heaven and earth were created by God, they are not substitutes for God, it explains. So there is no equivalence of the oath in these circumstances. And that was a problem in Jesus' day, because people would create these vows and make sure that there was some wiggle room if they needed to get out of it. And for the person agreeing to it, they might think, okay, this person's being fair dinkum, as we'd say. They were being honest. And while they might have had the intention to do what was promised, the person making the vow would use these words as a get-out-of-jail statement. So they don't follow through, either intentionally or unintentionally. You think you have recourse because they've given their vow to you. And so they've given their vow to heaven or earth. But you go to the Sanhedrin or you go to the scribes, the religious leaders, the lawyers of the day, and get legal advice on holding this person to account so that they will follow through with the promises that they make or make amends for breaking that promise. And the response would be something like, should have read the fine print. Let's give an example for today. Telstra and their current SMS terms states this. SMS services, text messages, are not suitable for telling or warning people about serious risks or asking emergency services organisations to come to someone's aid. This is in their terms and conditions. Delivery of SMS. We will try to deliver an SMS for up to 7 days. If we cannot deliver it after 7 days, the SMS will be deleted from the Telstra SMS network. And yet we have our Australian governments saying we have to be able to rely on these services in the case of an emergency. And yet Telstra have this as their clause. So for the hearer in Jesus' day, they could believe that they had an agreement in place, a vow, an oath. But swearing an oath by heaven or by earth was the fine print that the promiser could use to get out of it, to wiggle out of it, if they needed to. But for those in Jesus' audience who might have been tempted to rely on these wiggle words, Jesus ups the ante. In verse 34, Jesus continues, don't say by heaven, because heaven is God's throne. And don't say by earth, because the earth is his footstool. And don't say by Jerusalem, for Jerusalem is the city of the great king. And don't even say by my head, for you can't turn one hair white or black. Matthew 10:30 speaks about how God has numbered the hairs on our head. Once again, this passage is a launching ground to a later selection in Matthew 23:16-22, where Jesus confronts the oaths of the religious leaders and their manipulation of others. But here, now, Jesus joins the dots of these wiggle words and ties them back to a vow to God. Heaven is his throne, earth, footstool. Jerusalem, city of the great king. Head, God numbers the hairs on your head. And those in the know think, uh-oh. Then to make sure that this is an all-encompassing, readily accessible antithesis, Jesus brings it home in verse 37. Just say a simple yes, I will, or no, I won't. Anything beyond this is from the evil one. Or as some translations will have it, let your yes be yes, and your no, no. As Wilkins puts it, when each person's word is honest, we are liberated to trust each other freely. When a person's word or handshake on a matter cannot be trusted, we bring all kinds of legal safeguards in place which complicate daily life. So coming back to you, what stands out for you when you read this, when you see this text and it being unfolded today? What stands out for you? And what questions might it raise? Feel free to pop up your hand again and we'll race around with the microphone one more time quickly before we wrap up our time together. So, okay, Jesus is saying this. Don't swear. Yes be yes, no be no. What difference should that make? What challenges does that bring? What about in this situation? Love to hear your thoughts. Oh, we've got Forrest again. Yep. That's okay. Go for it, Forrest.
Thank you. I've always, for a long time, held let your yes be yes and your no be no. Hence why in the small things, and then with the big things, for me it's been really important. God showed me in many ways throughout my journey, especially because of my past, that you had to stand firm one way or another. And it's really, really difficult. And at times you feel that wavering. But then I'm reminded, yes or no.
Yep.
There's not this murky in between. Because then I feel like I'm not doing what's right and justice, for God and glorifying God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it's hard.
It's hard, and it can come at a cost,
Yes,
can't it?
it does.
When you do
and
that.
It has,
so, yep.
Yes, yes.
Okay. What about for others? Anyone else? We've got Colleen down the front.
When I had just come back to the Lord after having been away for 15 years, because I just couldn't be good enough, I made a promise to my husband, who was very against the church that I was going to, occasionally, not often, but occasionally. And I was drawn to that church. And he said, I suppose when I'm dead, you'll go to that church. And I said, no, I won't. I didn't swear by anything, it was just my word. And that's all I would ever do, as Forrest said. And he died. And I wanted to join the church. I just wanted to join. They worshipped beautifully and so on. And I finally couldn't see a way out because I felt that was a vow. I'd said I won't. And so I went to a pastor that I really trusted and expected him to pray for me and do whatever. And he just simply said, well, he's dead now. What do you think he's thinking now? Is he in heaven or is he not? And I said, well, I think he is. And if he is, would he want me to keep this vow? And I said, no, I don't think he would want me to. And he said, well, what? Look, just if he's not there, what do you think he's thinking now? Would he want you to go there or not? And I said, yes, I think he would. And I think he would release me, but I can't talk to him.
Yep.
And he just said, God's listening.
Yep.
And he didn't pray for me or anything, and I was totally released.
Yep. Wow. Yep. Thank you. All right. Anyone else, or anyone from home? Yep. So, head back.
I hear what everyone's saying, but I don't think life is always as easy as yes and no. I don't think life is always as easy as black and white.
Yep.
There is grey areas in between.
Yep.
And I think when it comes down to it, it is ultimately, if something happens, and I was thinking of the situation, so I said to Forrest, say for example, a family member was in danger. Someone walked in, threatened to kill them, they were in another room. And they said, okay, is that person in the other room? Would I say yes and commit them to death? The answer is no.
Mm-hmm.
I would lie.
Yep.
And I'd say no.
Yep.
But then ultimately, I think that decision to make that misappropriation, if you want to put it that way, it really is between you and God to resolve that.
Yep.
Not everyone else.
Yep.
If that makes sense. But I still don't think life is as easy as yes and no and black and white.
Okay.
There are grey situations in the middle.
Yep. Okay. And I think for me, part of that is, well, I agree in part. Part of that comes down to the heart and the intent. And also that we also have to be really careful about judging others. And what would we do in that circumstance? And that we can be at times judge, jury and chief executioner on other people's decisions. And so we don't know always what's going on. And so it's ultimately, you don't have to give an account to me. You have to give an account to God for your actions. And you have to give an account to Jesus, who brings out this statement. And it's like, okay, well, when you stand before Jesus, if he says, okay, so tell me about that. What was going on? And you have to give an account to Jesus ultimately for those situations. And he is a God who loves. He is a God who forgives. He is a God of truth. He is a God of justice. And he can be all of those things all at once, which is amazing. And that's why he is God and we are not. Any other thoughts before we keep on going? All right, let's bring it the home stretch. Now, Jesus is not saying that all vows are wrong, because Jesus himself gave the equivalent of an oath. When the high priest in Matthew 26:63 called Jesus to give an oath before the living God, he said this. The high priest said to Jesus, I demand in the name of the living God, tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God. Jesus replied, you have said it. And in the future, you will see the Son of Man seated in the place of power at God's right hand and coming on the clouds of heaven. Jesus was making a vow. Jesus was declaring, this is the case. The high priest read it, heard it as that. Then the high priest tore his clothes to show his horror. Josephus, a writer, says of the Essenes, a religious group that was in Jesus' day, any word of theirs has more force than an oath, swearing they avoid, regarding it as worse than perjury. For they say that one who is not believed without an appeal to God stands condemned already. Jesus flips it around the other way when he says, in essence, the same thing. Anything beyond this is from the evil one. From Genesis 3 to John 8, the devil, Satan, the serpent, the deceiver, is working in situations to encourage us to tell lies, to deceive, to shift around the truth. In John 8, Jesus says, "He, the devil, was a murderer from the beginning. He has always hated the truth because there is no truth in him. When he lies, he is consistent with his character, for he is a liar and the father of lies." In John 8:44. Now, there is an element of this that in what Jesus calls his followers to do then and now, that you can rely on or reach up for oaths or vows to back your word. If you are having to rely on, to reach for oaths or vows to back your word, then something has already happened to your credibility. We have given ground to evil and allowed our desire to be liked, our desire to protect ourselves, to be of greater value than our integrity. You know, when Mary and I were in the early years of our married life, I had issues with integrity. It wasn't as if I intentionally lied, but I wasn't always true to my word. I'd say to her that I'd be at home at a particular time, and an hour would go by, and it was after I was due to arrive, and I still hadn't left work. I got caught up doing stuff, important stuff, good stuff, but I got caught up doing stuff and lost track of time. At other times, I'd be rock climbing with friends of mine, Ross and Rowan, on the Glasshouse Mountains, and I'd tell Mary that I'd be home at a particular time, and a couple of hours would pass before we'd actually even finish the climb. And it reached a critical point in Mary and my relationship that our trust, Mary's trust of me, was hanging by a thread. So I bought a watch with an alarm. And when I gave Mary my word about a time, I would set the alarm of if I said I was going to be home at a particular time, and I knew this is how long it would take me to get there, from where I was, I would set an alarm and say, I need to leave by this time. I would sometimes even leave my friends. We'd get caught up doing stuff, they'd be busy. No, let's do a little bit more. And I'd say, I've got to go. No, I've got to go. And then when the alarm went off, they knew I would go. And if that left them doing stuff that they were wanting to still do, then that happened. It doesn't work anymore, the watch. But I keep it. I keep it as a reminder that I don't want to go back to where I was some 25 plus years ago when I couldn't be trusted to do what I said. Sometimes I slip up, but one of my core values is integrity over image. This means that I want to be known as a person who is true to his word, that I can be relied on to do what I say, and that when I can't, for reasons that are maybe beyond my control, or if something happens or I just mess up, I will fess up. I will admit my wrong, and rather than trying to protect my image, I will ensure that I do what I need to do to get better. According to Seek, a job search company, 41% of Australians feel it's acceptable to lie during a job interview. And in the realm of the earth, where lying is commonplace and at times assumed, what if the kingdom of God, what if the kingdom of heaven could take hold in your life and in mine? What if we, as followers of the way, as followers of the truth and the life, as followers of this same Jesus, were to follow his kingdom of heaven ethic and put in the effort and pay the price to be people of our word? That we would not have to cross our heart, hope to die, stick a needle in my eye, or pinky swear. What we need to do is to be prepared to invest the time, the energy, and the resources to make the necessary sacrifices to be people of our word. What if we were to be known as people where our yes is enough and our no is reliable. And if you think pastors are beyond and above all this, think again. Once again, according to the Ipsos Global Trustworthiness Rankings of 2024, clergy priests scored 29%, just above taxi drivers and just below lawyers. Let me pray. Jesus, it hits home. If we're honest, it does. Because we can all be tempted. We can all be tempted to deceive, to wiggle, to white lie, to outright lie. But Jesus, you are truth. And you call us to be people of our word, to let our yes be yes and our no be no. And what a difference that would make. And how much more would we stand out in the world if we as followers of you would do just that. Amen. So how do we respond today? Well, a couple of questions. In what area of your life do you struggle with follow through? Do you find yourself regularly needing to apologise for not following through? If you lead conversations or when you first meet someone, I'm so sorry that there's something going on. Who do you know that would be honest with you about your integrity? What might they say about the worth of your yes and your no? Ask Jesus to help you to be a person of your word. We're going to play some music, and as that music's played, I invite you to take some time to respond to the things that God's saying to you today. God bless you.